Imagine walking through cities older than Europe where colossal stone heads stare back at you, pyramids reach toward the sky, and roads connect mountains, deserts, and jungles, all built by civilizations that thrived long before the world knew their names. From the mysterious Olmecs to the brilliant Maya, the ingenious Ancestral Puebloans, the empire-building Incas, and the mighty Mississippians. These were societies of vision, science, and art, forgotten by time but not erased. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover their secrets, their achievements, and the incredible stories of people who shaped a continent in ways you've never imagined. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step. Don't skip it. Ancient American civilizations, voices beneath the stone, before the first European ship cut across the Atlantic, before maps were redrawn and names were renamed, the Americas were already ancient, not empty, not silent, not waiting to be discovered. They were alive, breathing, with cities, rituals, science, and stories passed from one generation to the next. Long before the modern world learned to look west, millions of people were already looking to the stars, shaping stone into meaning, and building civilizations that still whisper to us through ruins and memory. Imagine dawn breaking over the jungles of Mesoamerica. Mist rises slowly, clinging to towering pyramids carved by human hands. Stone steps worn smooth by centuries of bare feet. Somewhere, a conch shell sounds. A city awakens. This is not myth. This is history. The ancient civilizations of the Americas did not measure greatness by conquest alone. They measured it by balance between earth and sky, life and death, human beings and the natural world. Their story is not a footnote to world history. It is a central chapter. In the valleys of central Mexico, the Olmec civilization emerged over 3,000 years ago. We know them through colossal stone heads, faces carved with such individuality that they feel less like monuments and more like ancestors staring back at us. The Olmecs laid the foundations of later cultures, writing systems, ceremonial centers, religious symbols. They were the first great architects of civilization in the Americas, shaping ideas that would echo for centuries. From those echoes rose the Maya, masters of time and knowledge. The Maya did not merely observe the heavens, they understood them. They charted the movements of planets with astonishing precision, built calendars more accurate than those used in Europe for centuries, and developed a complex written language to record history, astronomy, and belief. Their city, Tikal, Palenque, Copan, rose from the rainforest like stone constellations aligned with the cosmos. Yet the Maya story is not just one of intellect. It is deeply human. Kings were born, ruled, failed, and died. Wars were fought. Droughts tested faith. Cities were abandoned, not because the people vanished, but because they adapted, moved, survived. Civilization did not collapse into nothingness. It transformed, as human societies always do. Further north, the ancestral Puebloans built homes not in spite of the desert, but in harmony with it. They carved entire communities into canyon walls, creating cities of stone that still cling to cliffs in places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. Their roads stretched for miles, connecting sacred spaces and trade networks. They understood water, sun, light, and seasonal change with a precision born of respect for the land. These were not primitive people struggling against nature. They were engineers, astronomers, farmers, and planners who lived with an awareness modern societies often forget, that survival depends on balance. And then in the heart of South America rose one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever known, the Inca Empire. Without iron tools, without the wheel, without a written alphabet, the Inca built an empire that stretched across mountains, deserts, and jungles. They constructed roads longer than those of Rome, bridges that swayed above terrifying chasms, and cities like Machu Picchu that seem less built than grown from the mountains themselves. The Inca governed through organization and obligatio. Food was stored for times of famine. Labor was shared. The empire was not perfect. It ruled with authority and force. But it understood something timeless. A society endures only when it plans for tomorrow. Across North America, the Mississippian culture raised vast earthen mounds aligned with the sun and stars. At Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, tens of thousands lived in a city larger and London at the same time. This was a political, religious, and economic center. Proof that complexity and urban life thrived in North America long before colonization. What binds all these civilizations together is not just architecture or technology, it is meaning. Every pyramid, every mound, every carved stone was an attempt to answer the same questions humans have always asked. Who are we? Where did we come from? How do we live with the forces greater than ourselves? And yet, much of this history was nearly erased, not by time, but by choice. When Europeans arrived, they often failed or refused to recognize civilization when they saw it. Cities were renamed, achievements were dismissed, stories were silenced, the past was rewritten to justify conquest. But stone remembers, earth remembers. And now, we are remembering too. Today, descendants of these ancient civilizations still live, speak, pray, and create across the Americas. Their cultures did not disappear. They endured against disease, against violence, against forgetting. Their survival is itself a historical achievement. The story of ancient American civilizations challenges us to rethink progress, power, and permanence. It reminds us that intelligence is not owned by one continent, that history does not begin with invasion, and that greatness often leaves behind quiet ruins rather than loud triumphs. When we stand before an ancient pyramid or trace the lines of a forgotten road, we are not looking at a dead past. We are standing in the presence of human effort, hope carved into stone, belief shaped from earth, memory carried across centuries. These civilizations were not lost. They were buried under misunderstanding. And when we uncover them, we do more than study history. We restore dignity to voices that still deserve to be heard. Because the story of ancient America is not just about what once was. It is about who we choose to remember. Long before the Aztecs, the Maya, or the Inca, there was Olmec civilization rising quietly along the fertile plains and riverbanks of what is now southern Mexico and the regions of Veracruz and Tabasco. The Olmecs emerged around 1500 BCE, yet their influence would ripple across centuries, leaving a legacy that shaped the course of Mesoamerican history in ways we are only beginning to understand. They were not conquerors of vast empires in the sense of armies marching over distant lands. Instead, they were architects of ideas, of symbols, and of structures that communicated power, spirituality, and social organization. Their civilization was deeply human, intimate, and yet ambitious, reaching for the stars while remaining firmly grounded in the earth that sustained. To walk in an Olmec city, even through the fragments that survive today, is to feel the pulse of a people who understood the sacred in everyday life. The great centers of San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes are not mere piles of stone. They are testimonies to a society that organized itself around ritual, hierarchy, and cosmology. The heart of these cities was the ceremonial center, a space where stone mounds rose like frozen waves, where plazas opened to the sky, and where the everyday and the divine intersected. These were places where kings or high priests, whose identities are glimpsed only through sculpture and artifact, communicated with the unseen world, seeking guidance for their people, for their crops, for their lives. Perhaps the most striking remnants of the Olmecs are their colossal stone heads, some standing over 3 meters tall and weighing tens of tons, each carved with astonishing individuality. These heads are not generic portraits. They are faces with character, bearing expressions of strength, determination, and dignity. Scholars have debated their significance, some suggesting they represent rulers, others ancestors, perhaps even mythic figures, yet the truth is that these stones were intended to be more than representation. They were embodiments of authority, permanence, and memory. Moving a single block of basalt from distant quarries to the ceremonial center, sculpting it with simple tools of stone and wood, and positioning it so carefully required not only incredible engineering skill, but a communal effort that must have brought an entire society together in shared purpose and devotion. The Olmecs were also pioneers in the development of symbolic systems that would shape the cultural and spiritual landscape of later civilizations. Among their most remarkable contributions is the early use of writing, signs, and glyphs that suggest a nascent but sophisticated system of communication. They were among the first in Mesoamerica to develop a calendrical system, one that would later be refined by the Maya and others, demonstrating a deep understanding of the cycles of time and the rhythms of the heavens. Mathematics, astronomy, and ritual were intertwined, not separate disciplines. And the Olmecs saw the alignment of a building or the carving of a stone not as mere decoration, but as an expression of cosmic order. Trade and agriculture sustained their civilization. Yet these were not simple endeavors. The Olmecs transformed their environment with ingenuity, cultivating maize, beans, and squash on fertile riverbanks, while also harnessing networks of trade that extended across Mesoamerica. Jade, obsidian, and other precious materials moved across hundreds of kilometers, carrying with them not only material wealth, but ideas, styles, and religious concepts. Through trade, the Olmecs influenced tant regions, inspiring the iconography, rituals, and social organization of peoples who would follow in their footsteps. Their reach, though subtle, was profound, demonstrating that power in ancient times could be measured not only in conquest, but in culture, innovation, and influence. Religious life was central to Olmec society. Jaguars, serpents, and other creatures recur in their art and sculpture, not simply as representations of the natural world, but as symbols of divine and cosmic power. The jaguar in particular dominates Olmec iconography, often portrayed in transformation, bridging the human and the supernatural. These motifs suggest a society deeply attuned to the spiritual dimensions of life, where ritual and myth were tools for understanding the world, for controlling it, and for explaining the mysteries of birth, death, and renewal. Sacred rituals likely involve music, dance, and offerings, engaging the senses and binding the community together in shared belief and collective memory. Olmec society, as reconstructed through archaeology, also reveals a complex social hierarchy. Elite rulers or priest-kings occupied central ceremonial spaces, while artisans, laborers, and farmers contributed to the construction, cultivation, and maintenance of the society. This was not a society built on coercion alone. It required cooperation, shared vision, and a sense of collective destiny. The Olmecs understood that the prosperity of the community depended on balance between human ambition and natural resources, between leadership and collective labor, between spiritual devotion and practical management of life. The Olmec legacy is often seen through fragments. Broken sculptures, scattered artifacts, and the faint outlines of ancient cities. But these remnants speak volumes. They tell a story of innovation that predates the pyramids of the Maya, of artistic expression that rivals anything found in the ancient world, and of social organization that laid the ground for empires yet to come. When one stands before a colossal Olmec head, runs a hand along the worn basalt, or traces the lines of a ceremonial mound, it is impossible not to feel a connection across time, a recognition that these were human beings, not unlike ourselves, striving to understand their place in the universe and to leave a mark that would outlast their own lives. Archaeological disc. Ovaries continue to reveal the depth and sophistication of Olmec society. Excavations uncover residential structures, drainage systems, and ceremonial platforms, all demonstrating meticulous planning and knowledge of engineering. These cities were not accidental. They were conceived with intention, designed to integrate with rivers, topography, and celestial events. Their builders understood that. Architecture could be a form of storytelling, a way to encode meaning into stone and earth, creating a landscape imbued with social and spiritual significance. Even in their disappearance, the Olmecs left echoes that reverberated through time. Later civilizations, the Maya, the Zapotec, the Aztec, borrowed and transformed Olmec symbols, religious concepts, and artistic styles. The Olmec civilizatio may have declined around 400 BCE, yet their innovations in writing, iconography, ritual, and urban planning continued to shape Mesoamerica for centuries. They were the quiet architects of a world that would rise to complexity and beauty, teaching subsequent generations lessons about order, faith, and creativity. To study the Olmecs is to confront the fragility and resilience of human achievement. Their civilization, like all ancient societies, faced environmental challenges, social pressures, and the inexorable passage of time. Yet what remains is not a story of loss alone, but a story of influence, imagination, and the enduring human spirit. Through stones carved with care, through the echoes of ritual spaces, through traces of trade and cultivation, the Olmecs speak to us across Mille, reminding us that civilization is not merely the sum of its monuments, but the sum of the ideas, devotion, and labor of people committed to shaping a world larger than themselves. Long before the arrival of Europeans on the shores of the Americas, the Maya civilization had already risen to heights of ingenuity and splendor that continue to captivate our imagination. Stretching across what is Now southeastern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. The Maya built a world of cities, plazas, temples, and observatories that reflected both their mastery of the physical landscape and their profound understanding of time, the heavens, and the human condition. Their story is not merely one of stone and architecture, but of intellect, spirituality, struggle, and resilience. A huma, narrative carved into the forests, mountains, and rivers of Mesoamerica. The Maya were astronomers long before the telescope was imagined. They observed the sky with patience and devotion, charting the movements of the sun, the moon, Venus, and other celestial bodies with remarkable precision. From these observations, they created a calendar system so accurate that it surpassed many contemporary systems in Europe and the Middle East. The Maya understood the cycles of the cosmos not as abstract phenomena, but as living forces that influenced agriculture, ritual, and daily life. Each planting season, each festival, each act of governance was aligned with the heavens, creating a society in which science, spirituality, and civic life were inseparable. Walking through the ruins of Tikal, Kop, and Palenque, or Uxmal, one senses the Maya's ability to merge art and architecture into a narrative of power and faith. Massive pyramids rise above the canopy, their steps worn by countless generations who ascended to honor gods, mark astronomical events, or perform ritual ceremonies. Palaces and ball courts reveal a society deeply invested in both political power and communal activity. Hieroglyph HS carved into stone record the deeds of kings, the succession of dynasties, and the rituals that defined their world. These inscriptions were not only historical records, but instruments of cultural memory, ensuring that each generation understood its place in the continuum of time. Maya kings and queens ruled as intermediaries between the earthly and the divine. Their authority was both politica, and spiritual, reinforced through monumental architecture, elaborate dress, ritual offerings, and symbolic imagery. They were expected to sustain cosmic balance, to communicate with gods, ancestors, and spirits, and to make decisions that would ensure the prosperity of their cities. The intricacies of Maya court life, revealed through archaeological discoveries and inscriptions, suggest a society that valued both the visible demonstration of power and the invisible guidance of knowledge, wisdom, and religious observance. Art played a central role in Maya life. Stelae and altars, painted murals, intricate ceramics, jade figurines, and elaborate masks conveyed stories, history, and cosmology. The Maya infused every medium with meaning, often depicting rulers alongside gods, animals, and supernatural beings in scenes that conveyed moral, spiritual, or political lessons. Even everyday objects were not devoid of symbolism. Tools, jewelry, and household items could carry sacred or social significance. Through their art, the Maya communicated a vision of the world in which the human and divine were intertwined and where the past, present, and future were linked in an unbroken cycle. The Maya were also innovators in mathematics and writing. Their vigesimal base 20 number system allowed them to record astronomical data, calculate calendrical cycles, and maintain records of trade, tribute, and genealogy. They developed a sophisticated system of glyphs, combining logograms and syllabic signs to encode language in stone, bone, and codices made of bark paper. Though much of the written record was lost to time, conquest, and deliberate destruction, the surviving texts demonstrate a people capable of complex thought, capable of articulating abstract ideas, and capable of recording history with precision and nuance. Trade and agriculture were the lifeblood of Maya civilization. The Maya transformed their environment through terraced fields, irrigation systems, and soil management practices that allowed dense populations to thrive in regions of varying fertility. Maize, beans, squash, cacao, and cotton were cultivated with knowledge refined over generations, sustaining urban centers and feeding ritual life. Trade networks extended across vast distances, linking the highlands to the lowlands, the coast to the interior, and exchanging goods such as jade, obsidian, salt, feathers, and ceramics. These networks were conduits not only of material wealth, but of ideas, religious practices, artistic styles, and political influence. Yet the Maya story is not one of unbroken triumph. Cities rose and fell, dynasties flourished and collapsed, and communities adapted to environmental pressures, droughts, warfare, and social upheaval. The so-called collapse of the CL. Asic Maya period between the 8th and 9th century CE was not an end, but a transformation. Some cities were abandoned, others persisted. Populations migrated, cultural practices shifted, and political structures changed. The Maya demonstrated resilience, adapting to challenges in ways that ensured the survival of their culture and knowledge. Even in the face of adversity, religion remained sent. Rao, throughout these transformations, the Maya believed in a complex pantheon of gods associated with the sun, moon, rain, corn, and the underworld. Rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies were performed to maintain harmony between the human and supernatural worlds. The ball game, an athletic and symbolic contest, carried religious and political significance, reflecting cosmic dualities and reinforcing social hierarchies. Sacred caves, cenotes, and mountains were seen as portals to the divine, places where humans could communicate with gods, ancestors, and spirits. The natural landscape itself was imbued with meaning, shaping the Maya's sense of identity, belonging, and spiritual responsibility. Education and knowledge were valued, particularly among the elite. Priests, scribes, and nobles were trained to read and write, to calculate astronomical events, and to perform rituals accurately. Knowledge was a form of power, and its preservation ensured the continuity of governance, religion, and cultural memory. Even children learned stories, songs, and skills that connected them to their history and to the responsibilities of adulthood. The Maya understood that culture is transmitted not through artifacts or monuments, but through the careful cultivation of human understanding and social continuity. Modern archaeology has uncovered the scale and sophistication of Maya urbanism. Some cities contain tens of thousands of inhabitants, organized around monumental architecture, plazas, ball courts, markets, and residential compounds. Roads and causeways connected cities across vast distances, facilitating trade, communication, and political alliances. Engineering, planning, and knowledge of the landscape were essential to sustain these communities, demonstrating a level of organization that rivals contemporary civilizations across the globe. Through all of this, the Maya maintained a worldview that recognized time as cyclical, history as layered, and human existence as connected to both ancestors and cosmos. Life was measured not only by survival, but by alignment with patterns of nature, society, and spirit. Their calendars, rituals, and urban planning reflected an awareness that human action had consequences, that social harmony and environmental stewardship were intertwined, and that knowledge, passed from one generation to the next, was a sacred trust, even Toda. The Maya endure. Millions of descendants continue to speak Mayan languages, practice traditional rituals, cultivate ancestral lands, and preserve art, music, and knowledge passed down over centuries. Their culture is a living bridge between past and present, demonstrating that civilization is not merely measured by monuments or technological achievement, but by continuity, memory, and the Capac. To adapt without losing identity. The Maya civilization, with its intricate hieroglyphs, monumental pyramids, celestial observations, and profound spirituality, challenges us to reconsider what it means to be advanced, to be human, and to leave a legacy. It reminds us that knowledge, art, and faith can endure far longer than empires built solely on military conquest, and that understanding human story requires listening to the whispers of the past, reading the inscriptions etched into stone, and walking among the ruins where echoes of ancient voices still speak to the present, long before the arrival of Europeans on the continent, long before modern maps could trace roads and cities across North America. The ancestral Puebloans carved a world of ingenuity and endurance into the deserts and canyons of the Southwest. Often called the Anasazi in older scholarship, their story begins around 100 CE and stretches across centuries in which human beings transformed an unforgiving landscape into thriving communities. They did not simply survive in this arid and challenging environment, they mastered it. They built homes that clung to cliffs, developed agricultural PR, practices that harnessed scarce water, and created a society in which art, spirituality, and daily life were woven together in intricate and meaningful patterns. Their civilization is a testament to human adaptability, foresight, and the enduring desire to create beauty and order in even the harshest conditions. Walking among the ruins of Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Canyon de Shelly, one can almost hear the echoes of daily life. Stone dwellings rise from canyon walls as if they had grown there naturally, their rooms carefully arranged to shelter families and to reflect social organization. Multi-storied structures constructed with stone, adobe, and timber reveal a knowledge of architecture and engineering that belies the apparent simplicity of the desert. Each stone was selected, shaped, and placed with care, creating homes that endured centuries of sun, wind, and rain. Living spaces were not merely functional, they were symbolic, designed to integrate with the surrounding landscape, to honor celestial cycles, and to foster community cohesion. Agriculture was central to ancestral Puebloan life, yet it required extraordinary ingenuity in a region where rainfall was unpredictable. And the soil often thin, the Puebloans engineered systems to capture and conserve water, to plant crops on terraces that minimized erosion, and to rotate fields in a manner that preserved fertility. Maize, beans, and squash, known collectively as the Three Sisters, formed the backbone of their diet, cultivated with skill and attention to seasonal cycles. Beyond sustenance, agriculture was intertwined with ritual and cosmology. Planting and harvest were not merely practical tasks, they were acts of reverence, tied to the movement of the sun, the changing of the seasons, and the spiritual well-being of the community. Trade and communication were also vital. Though the Southwest might appear isolated, the ancestral Puebloans were connected through vast networks that spanned hundreds of kilometers. Turquoise, pottery, shells, and other goods moved between communities, linking the high deserts with distant regions, carrying with them not only material wealth, but ideas, artistic motifs, and ritual practices. Roads, trails, and causeways facilitated this movement, evidence of a society capable of complex planning and coordination. These connections enabled the Puebloans to flourish socially, economically, and culturally, creating a civilization that balanced local self-sufficiency with broader regional integration. Social organization among the ancestral Puebloans was sophisticated. Kivas, circular subterranean chambers used for ritual and commune. Owl gathering were central to community life. These spaces were often elaborately constructed, with stone benches, fire pits, and ventilated openings that carried smoke upward in a manner that may have been symbolically significant. Kivas were places where elders, leaders, and spiritual practitioners guided rituals, taught younger generations, and reinforced the shared values and beliefs that held communities together. Leadership was not necessarily centralized in a single ruler, rather, authority and responsibility were distributed among elders, spiritual leaders, and skilled artisans, creating a society in which cooperation and collective responsibility were essential for survival. Art and symbolism flourished alongside practical achievements. Pottery, woven textiles, rock art, and carve. D-stone reflect a society attentive to both beauty and meaning. Designs often depicted animals, celestial bodies, and abstract motifs communicating stories, spiritual beliefs, and social identity. Even functional objects, from storage vessels to tools, were often adorned with patterns that conveyed significance beyond their immediate use. The ancestral Puebloans understood that human expression, as not separate from daily life, art, spirituality, and utility were inseparable, each reinforcing the other in a continuous dialogue between people and their environment. Chaco Canyon in particular stands as a testament to the ambition and coordination of the ancestral Puebloans. Between 900 and 1150 CE, this center became a hub of ceremonial, administrative, and economic activity. Great houses, massive multi-story complexes were constructed with hundreds of rooms aligning precisely with solar and lunar events. Roads extended outward for tens of kilometers, connecting Chaco to outlying communities and creating a network of cultural and political influence. The scale of these constructions demonstrates not only technical skill, but also the ability to organize labor, resources, and knowledge across vast distances, reflecting a society capable of planning, vision, and long-term coordination. Cliff dwellings, which came later, reveal a remarkable adaptatio to the challenges of the environment. Communities like those at Mesa Verde built homes in alcoves beneath sheer rock faces, using natural protection to shield themselves from the elements and potential threats. These dwellings required not only architectural skill, but social cohesion, as constructing multi-story buildings on cliffs demanded careful planning, cooperation, and shared effort. Access to these homes was often via ladders or narrow paths, creating a sense of security while also reinforcing communal bonds, as neighbors depended on one another for daily life and survival. The ancestral Puebloans also had a deep understanding of celestial cycles. Many structures are aligned with the solstices, equinoxes, and other astronomical events, indicating that their observation of the HEA Vens informed both practical and spiritual decisions. This connection between architecture, agriculture, and astronomy demonstrates a worldview in which humans were integrated into the broader rhythms of nature. Every stone laid, every room constructed, and every field planted was part of a careful, deliberate effort to harmonize human existence with the cycles of the world around them. The decline of the ancestral Puebloans, like that of many civilizations, was not sudden or uniform. Environmental stress, including prolonged droughts, resource depletion, and social pressures, prompted migrations and adaptations. Communities dispersed, moved to new locations, and redefined their cultural practices. Yet even in this period of transformation, the core elements of Puebloan culture, community, ritual, artistry, and knowledge of the land persisted, carried forward by descendants who continue to live, cultivate, and maintain traditions in the American Southwest. Archaeology has revealed that the ancestral Puebloans were not isolated or stagnant. They were innovators, problem solvers, and thinkers who responded creatively to challenges. Their achievements in architecture, water management, social organization, and art testify to a civilization deeply attuned to both the practical and the spiritual dimensions of life. Every kiva, every cliff dwelling, every ceremonial road, and every piece of pottery speaks to a people who understood the fragility and resilience of human society, who valued cooperation and collective effort, and who sought to harmonize their existence with the Natu Rao world around them. The story of the ancestral Puebloans challenges modern assumptions about what it means to build a civilization. Their achievements were not measured by conquest or empire, but by the enduring legacy of knowledge, ingenuity, and community. They demonstrate that human ingenuity can flourish even under difficult conditions, that society can be built on shared purpose and revere. NCE for the environment, and that culture is preserved not only in monuments, but in the mountains of South America, where jagged peaks cut the sky and clouds cling to ridges like wisps of memory. The Inca Empire rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever known. Centered in the highlands of Peru, the Incas forged an empire that strayed across deserts, jungles, and mountains, uniting peoples and landscapes that would seem impossible to connect. Their achievements were not built on iron, wheels, or written records, yet they accomplished feats of engineering, organization, and administration that rivaled any contemporary civilization. The story of the Incas is one of vision, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of cohesion across a vast and challenging terrain. The foundation of the Inca Empire, or Tawantinsuyu, was laid in the fertile valley of Cusco, a city that became the spiritual, political, and administrative heart of the empire. From Cusco, the Incas extended their influence through conquest, diplomacy, and integration, creating a network of provinces, each governed with precision and connected to the center, through roads, messengers, and shared systems of governance. Unlike many empires, which relied primarily on force to maintain control, the Incas sought to integrate conquered peoples into their social, religious, and economic systems. They recognized that the durability of an empire depended not only on power, but on inclusion, infrastructure, and shared purpose. The Inca road system is among the most extraordinary achievements of the empire. Over 25,000 miles of roads, some paved and some carefully leveled through mountains, connected cities, agricultural terraces, and administrative centers. These roads were not merely practical, they were lifelines that allowed information, goods, and armies to travel quickly across regions that might otherwise have seemed impossible to chiar. A verse. Bridges of woven fiber spanned chasms, steps were carved into cliffs, and way stations provided shelter and supplies for messengers, soldiers, and travelers. The road system was both a marvel of engineering and a tool of governance, allowing the Inca to maintain cohesion over a sprawling and diverse population. Agriculture was central to the empire's success, yet the Incas faced landscapes of extraordinary challenge. Terraces clung to mountain slopes, irrigated by canals that channeled water with precision, preventing erosion and maximizing arable land. Crops such as maize, potatoes, quinoa, and beans were cultivated with skill and foresight, stored in state-managed granaries to protect against famine. The Incas understood the cycles of nature, the variability of rainfall, and the sea, challenges of altitude, adapting their methods to the contours of the land. Their agricultural achievements were not merely practical, they were acts of ingenuity designed to sustain cities, armies, and ceremonial life across vast distances. The Inca social system was organized with remarkable efficiency. At the top was the Sapa Inca, considered both a political ruler and a divine figure, embodying the connection between the heavens and the earth. Beneath him, administrators managed provinces, collected tribute, and organized labor, ensuring that the needs of the empire were met. The Mita system required communities to contribute labor to public works, including road construction, agricultural projects, and monumental building. This was not slavery, but a civic obligation, a way of connecti individuals to the welfare of the collective, a form of social cohesion that reinforced the strength and stability of the empire. Engineering and architecture reflect the Incas' extraordinary skill and attention to detail. Machu Picchu, perhaps the most famous Inca site, demonstrates their ability to integrate construction seamlessly with the natural landscape. Stone structures were fitted with such precision that mortar was often unnecessary, and buildings were designed to withstand earthquakes that frequently shook the region. Terraces, canals, and plazas were aligned with celestial events, indicating that the Incas, like other ancient civilizations, observed the heavens closely and incorporated that knowledge into their society. The harmonious blending of function, aesthetics, and spirituality in their architecture reveals a civilization deeply attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. Religion permeated every aspect of Inca life. The worship of Inti, the sun god, was central to their cosmology, symbolizing life, warmth, and authority. Rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies were performed to honor the gods, maintain cosmic balance, and ensure prosperity. Sacred sites such as mountaintops, rivers, and shrines were considered portals between the human and divine worlds. Priests played a crucial role in interpreting the will of the gods, guiding the emperor, and preserving knowledge. Religion was inseparable from governance and daily life, reinforcing social order while providing a moral and spiritual framework for the people. The Inca also developed a system of record keeping through quipas, knotted strings that encoded numerical and possibly narrative information. In the absence of a written language, quipas served as administrative tools, allowing the central government to track census data, tribute, and resources. They were essential to maintaining the vast bureaucracy required to govern millions of people across mountains, deserts, and jungles. This illustrates the Inca capacity for abstract thinking and the innovative use of available technology to address complex societal needs. Trade and exchange within the empire were carefully managed. While the Incas did not have money in the way modern economies do, goods, labor, and services were coordinated through redistribution systems. Resources from the highlands, lowlands, and coastal region were collected and distributed according to need, creating a form of economic stability that ensured communities could withstand environmental challenges. Luxury items, including gold, silver, textiles, and pottery, circulated within the elite, reinforcing social hierarchies while celebrating artistic achievement. Military conquest was part of Inca expansion, but it was strategic rather than destructive. Conquered communities were often allowed to maintain local customs, provided they integrated into the imperial framework. Marriages between noble families, relocation of populations, and construction of roads and administrative centers helped assimilate diverse peoples while maintaining loyalty. The empire's strength lay not only in force, but in the careful management of relation. Ships, communication, and shared infrastructure. The decline of the Inca Empire was sudden, precipitated by the arrival of Europeans in the early 16th century. Disease, internal conflict, and the technological advantages of foreign invaders destabilized a society that had endured for centuries. Yet the Incas left behind more than ruins. Their terraces still feed communities, their roads still connect regions, their art and architecture still inspire wonder, and their descendants continue to practice traditions, speak languages, and honor rituals that trace directly back to the empire. The Inca story is one of resilience, adaptation, and the profound capacity of human beings to organize, create, and thrive in harmony with challenging landscapes. Through their achievements, the Incas challenge assumptions about what is necessary to build a great civilization. They demonstrate that writing is not the only path to governance, that metal tools are not required to construct cities of lasting grandeur, and that human ingenuity can flourish under constraints that might seem insurmountable. They remind us that civilization is as much about organization, vision, and communal effort as it is about technology, conquest, or wealth. Their roads, terraces, temples, and cities remain enduring symbols of human creativity and determination, evidence that societies can shape landscapes, organize millions of people, and sustain complex networks across environments that test the limits of human endurance practices, beliefs, and connections passed down through generations long before European explorers sailed across the Atlantic. Before cities like St. Louis or New Orleans existed, the lands along the rivers of what is now the American Midwest and Southeast were alive with the pulse of the Mississippian culture. Emerging around 800 CE and flourishing until the early 1600s, the Mississippian people built complex societies that rivaled contemporary civilizations in population, urban planning, and social organization, stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, from the Mississippi River to the Appalachian foothills. This culture was defined by its monumental architecture, elaborate ceremonial centers, extensive trade networks, and deeply rooted social and spiritual systems. Their story is one of ingenuity, resilience, and vision. A narrative etched into the earth itself and preserved in mounds, plazas, and artifacts that speak across centuries. At the heart of Mississippian society were the great earthen mounds, massive constructions of soil shaped with labor, skill, and purpose. These mounds were more than burial sites. They were platforms for temples, residences of leaders, and centers for ceremonial and civic life. Kay's Mound at Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, is the largest of them all, rising over 30 meters high and covering more than 14 acres at its base. Constructed without metal tools or draft animals, this monumental mound required the collective effort of thousands of people shaping soil with baskets and human labor over decades. It was a tangible assertion of community, faith, and political authority, a physical manifestation of the society's values and vision. Cahokia itself was a thriving city, perhaps the largest urban center north of Mexico at its peak, home to tens of thousands of people. Streets, plazas, and mounds were carefully planned and aligned with celestial events, reflecting both practical organization and spiritual understanding. The city was a hub of trade, ceremony, and governance, with elites living atop mounds and commoners residing in surrounding neighborhoods. The placement of mounds and plazas created a sense of order, a shared understanding of social hierarchy and ritual practice that bound the population together. Walking through the ruins today, one can imagine the vibrancy of city life, the marketplaces buzzing with activity, the sounds of drums and flutes resonating across the central plaza, and the scent of fires from cooking and ceremonial offerings. Trade was a cornerstone of Mississippian culture, linking communities across vast distances. Obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, seashells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains moved along rivers and overland routes, creating networks that facilitated not only material exchange, but cultural and spiritual exchange. Through trade, ideas, technologies, and religious practices spread across regions, helping to unify disparate communities under shared beliefs and aesthetic traditions. This connectivity illustrates the sophistication of Mississippian society, its ability to integrate local and regional resources into a cohesive economic, social, and cultural system. The Mississippian people were deeply attuned to cosmology and spirituality, which permeated every aspect of life. Mounds were often aligned with the cardinal directions, solstices, and equinoxes, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. Religion was intertwined with governance, with leaders serving as intermediaries between the human and spiritual world. Rituals included dances, feasts, and offerings, sometimes involving human sacrifice, performed to ensure the fertility of the land, the prosperity of the people, and the favor of deities associated with the sun, corn, water, and the earth. Spiritual beliefs were embedded in art, architecture, and daily life, creating a culture in which the sacred and the secular were inseparable. Social hierarchy. Chai was pronounced in Mississippian communities. Elites lived in prominent residences atop mounds, wielding political, religious, and economic authority. They controlled the distribution of resources, organized labor for construction and agriculture, and led ceremonial events. Commoners, artisans, and laborers formed the backbone of society, contributing to agriculture, craft production, and maintenance of infrastructure. Social cohesion depended on reciprocal obligations, shared labor, and respect for leadership, creating a society in which collective effort ensured survival, prosperity, and cultural continuity. Agriculture underpinned Mississippian life, with maize as the staple crop, supplemented by beans, squash, nuts, and fish. Communities developed techniques to maximize yield, including raised fields, terraces, and irrigation systems in some regions. Seasonal cycles structured labor, trade, and ritual, linking agricultural work to spiritual practice. Festivals and ceremonies celebrated planting, harvest, and celestial events, reinforcing the connection between human activity and the broader rhythms of nature. Knowledge of the environment, passed from generation to generation, was essential to the success and stability of these complex societies. Art and symbolism flourished across the Mississippian world. Pottery, shell engraving, stone figurines, copper ornaments, and carved wood conveyed stories, religious concepts, and social identity. Iconography often depicted animals such as birds, snakes, and the mythical bird serpent motif representing cosmological principles and spiritual forces. Art was not merely decorative, it was a means of communicating status, belief, and memory, binding communities together through shared visual language and cultural narrative. Everyday objects were often imbued with symbolic meaning, reflecting the integration of function and spirituality in daily life. Cahokia and other urban centers were carefully planned, demonstrating advanced understanding of urban design and civil engineering. Roads and causeways connected mounds, plazas, and neighborhoods, facilitating movement, trade, and communication. Water management was achieved through canals, reservoirs, and embankments, ensuring that large populations could thrive even in variable climates. These feats of engineering illustrate that the Mississippians approached their environment not as passive inhabitants, but as active shapers, working in harmony with rivers, floodplains, and forests to sustain urban life. The decline of the Mississippian culture began around the 13th and 14th centuries, influenced by environmental stress, resource depletion, social unrest, and possibly disease. Many major centers were abandoned, populations dispersed, and political structures fragmented. Yet this decline was not an erasure. Cultural traditions, knowledge, and practices persisted, carried forward by descendant communities who continue to live in the region, maintaining rituals, oral history, and crafts that trace directly back to the Mississippian people. Archaeology reveals that while the centers may have declined, the spirit of the culture endured in new forms, adapted to changing circumstances while preserving a legacy of innovation and complexity. Studying the Mississippian culture challenges modern perceptions of North American history. It demonstrates that complex urban societies, sophisticated governance, monumental architecture, and rich cultural expression existed in North America long before European contact. Their achievements were not accidental, but the product of careful observation, planning, cooperation, and respect for both community and environment. The Mississippians show that civilization is measured not only in wealth or conquest, but in the ability to organize, sustain, and enrich human life across generations. The Mississippian world, with its mounds, plazas, roads, and artifacts, is a test, a mint to the human capacity for ingenuity, resilience, and vision. These people transformed rivers and plains into centers of culture, spirituality, and political authority. Their cities were not mere settlements, but expressions of shared values, collective labor, and cosmological understanding. They remind us that history is not confined to written records or monumental stone alone. It lives in Tihu, landscape, in the patterns of agriculture, in the alignment of mounds, and in the enduring practices of descendants who continue to honor their ancestors. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe.